Call this meeting to order. And so we have an updated agenda today as we had some staff that were unable to attend, so we made some last minute changes. Any additional changes to the agenda? If not, motion to accept the agenda as presented. Councillor Adams.
Motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We do have a delegation tonight, so we'll start with that. So Srini, if you guys want to come up there and introduce yourself. I don't know if you're tag teaming in or not. The mic is on and live, and I hear that people, it's really important that you use the mic so they can hear you at home.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the council having us here. We are part of the council compensation committee. It was me, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Joe McWilliams, and Josh Fersen was the member from the public. We met on March 21st, and our obligation was to go through the compensation for the council and mayor and determine recommend a strategy going forward. To arrive at what we have, we were to look at similar municipalities, similar towns like ours, namely Peace River and West Loch is comparable. And we looked at those and looked at what our council and mayor are compensated. And we've come up with the decision, recommendation, like I keep saying decision, we can't make decisions, recommendations, that increase the monthly allowance for the councillors to $11.90 and retain $45 an hour maximum, $3.50 per day maximum. It seems reasonable to what other towns our size do. And adjust the mileage to what the CRA rates are. So it keeps changing based on the fuel rates. And I mean, most companies still stay at 50 and 48, which is not fair when the fuel price have doubled over the years. So that one has changed to what the CRA rate has to going forward. The meal is 65 per day, seems reasonable. Mostly when you stay out, you get a free breakfast, which means just lunch and supper. It's still reasonable. For the mayor part, we did the monthly allowance of $2,200. Again, the rest of everything stays same, $45 per hour, $3.50 a day maximum, and $65 for the meal is the same thing. For the deputy mayor, it was increased to $1,300 a month. Again, the rest of everything else stays same. $45 per hour to a maximum $3.50 a day, $65 a day for reimbursements of meal. And the recommendation is to backdate from January 1st, 2022. And that's all we had. And like I said, we were given the information for the municipalities and towns around Slave Lake. We had Barhead, Athabasca, Blackfields, Cardston, and Pincher Creek, Red Cliff, and Slave Lake, St. Paul. All those information are available to us to arrive at the decision, and plus Peace River and West Loch. So
Okay.
Peace River was the benchmark because it's a similar town, similar population, similar struggles. That's all I have.
Okay, so I'll start by saying I appreciate the committee taking the time to debate this. And typically, this is one that the previous council would debate before an election. But due to some capacity issues, it was ended up getting pushed off. So now you're in the awkward stage where the current council would decide their own piece. That being said, later in this agenda, we do debate the topic, but I would say if council has any questions about the information from the committee, that we would entertain doing that now and say the debate till later. So questions from council? So just one, so like when you're looking across the board, because we don't have the data that you guys looked at, so we just have the recommendations. And so essentially you're saying leave everything as is, you're just making a change to the monthly allowance, all the meeting rates, all the hourly rates, the daily stuff, everything stays the same.
And the fuel mileage.
And sorry, and change the fuel mileage to match CRA, which totally makes sense. So on that then, is the rate that you're proposing kind of middle of the row, or is that on the high end, or that's just comparable to everyone else? I'm just curious.
It's comparable to towns like ours, like so Peace River. And again, even Peace River is still a little bit higher to what we are right now.
Okay.
But I think an increase is warranted, is what we believe as a group, because
Okay.
of to be honest, other than the last election, there was hardly anybody putting in the hat in here. So anybody who's stepping up to public service has to be, and this is just is what it is.
Fair enough. Questions, comments? If there's none, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Harry, you have something you want to add?
We were very pleased that Srini was our chair
Okay.
from our group. I just want to say that. And secondly, we were done everything in a business-like manner within an hour. And we felt confident as a group. So it wasn't sort of like a 2-2 split on anything. We had 4 members voting and bringing things back to you folks. And personally, and I know a number of others feel the same way. We know how hard you people work. Not just here tonight, but all of your subcommittees and stuff that you do. And I think sometimes you're in a very, very difficult spot, like the 4-3 votes are very, very interesting to the public sometimes. But those are tough calls to make. And so we strongly recommended that you do deserve the raise that we are putting forward. Nice part of this committee is we're only a recommending body, so we could do whatever, and then you guys can do whatever you want to do, as you know. So that's all I want to say.
Okay. Well, hopefully Srini put some of those leadership skills and board skills to work in the future for something else. Okay, thank you very much for your time, guys. Okay, we'll jump in next to our CAO updates. And so Gary is away tonight,
Yeah,
but Roland's going to lead us through it.
Well, I have a couple of highlights here. Good evening, your worship and members of council. So I have a couple of notes to highlight here on the CEO update. First off, we started working with the MD of Lesser Slave River on several mutual projects. And this will include monthly meetings between CEOs and key staff. Some of the highlights that we're working on here is a reciprocal agreement for peace officers. So the thought process here is that we both have peace officers and are by working together, we might be able to accomplish more for the same amount of money here. So a little bit better bang for our buck. We have an MOU with Alberta Parks and the MD will be brought to council for the April 19th meeting. We received a call from the Chief of Staff of the Minister of Transportation, council's advocacy on the highway situation. Council requested the ministry share some information on highways in the province that are worse, that are in a worse state than the Slave Lake area. Transportation has shut that down, stating that they have no obligation to share that information about other jurisdiction. We are advised by the minister that highway improvement decisions are based on engineering technical merit. And the reality is that there are more projects needed than funding allows. Moving on the economic development front. So we have a couple of programs underway. The first one is the Visual Identity Project, and this is part of the branding strategy for the 2022 budget that we just outlined here. Part of this Visual Identity Project here is looking at the town of Slave Lake, its identity and its logo. And we're working on a rebranding strategy to modernize the logo and kind of some of the key messaging for the town and working with our contractor Insight Solutions. So management behind the scenes has been working with Insight on this project. They are still collecting data and they're about to move into their engagement phase. What this is gonna encompass is interviews that will hopefully begin next week. And that is a list of public members that have been brought forward or recommended that they go and interview. So there's a variety of opinions throughout the community, a variety of different people that we've reached out to kind of get feedback on their thought process on this whole visual identity project, to get a broad scope of information and public feedback. So that's going to be starting very shortly. And then they also plan to launch a public survey coming up. Proposed options will be planned and presented to council in May. We're also working on our digital summer tourism campaign. So looking at Travel Alberta funding application to try and help offset some of the costs or enhance the budget for this campaign. And the target date is to launch the campaign in early May, running to mid-August. Last but not least, we're going to hold a photo contest. So the town has a limited library of quality photos for marketing purposes. We're going to be launching a photo contest to hopefully attract local photographer submissions, just to get some of the local people engaged with the work to get us some quality photos for marketing. Moving on, for under finance. So we've had 4 business license canceled and 2 new business license issued in the past 3 weeks. The tax sale was held on April 4th. No persons attended the auction or bid on any of the properties. By the time the auction had started, the list had dwindled down to only 4 outstanding properties that were actually up for auction. Since no one has bidded on this process, the town will be moving forward with the remaining steps that can be taken after the auction is held. For public works, biggest things that are being outlaid and looked at right now is pothole patching. So we're going to be working around the weather conditions, but identifying areas in need of pothole repairs and kind of get that program up and running. We're also reviewing the plastic asphalt crack filling, the program that we tested out last year. So it's been long enough here that we can kind of start to see the how that new product actually held up over the winter here. On to projects. Big project that we have. People might notice you've seen some piping there. Either it was this morning or yesterday. Later around Sugar Park. That's the Sawridge Creek water line replacement. So the contractor mobilized on March 28th. The horizontal drilling work under the creek is complete. And I believe all of the pipe now has also been fed through under the riverbed into the other section. So that project is working on coming along swiftly. Planning and development, currently conducting research and compiling data on planning and development fees and preparing spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations for council. For the fire department, March started to get back to in-person training after COVID-19 protocols started to relax. So they started another recruitment class with 3 successful firefighters completing training and testing along with the health and safety orientation on April 11th. For community services, under aquatics, an assistant aquatic supervisor has been hired. Regular events and extra programming will resume shortly. And Spring Lessons has set a large number of registration, and we are trying to accommodate as many swimmers as possible. So positive feedback on that front, that we're kind of in a position where there's almost too many swimmers for the capacity to handle. So it's nice to see the facility being fully utilized. For the family and community support services, family fun nights continue to be popular, and March saw 2 full events, with the next event to be held on April 20th. The seniors coordinator, along with 3 volunteers, are running the tax clinic program that's located in the front lobby of the town office until April 29th. The clinic is open 3 days a week. As of March 28th, 2022, 118 returns have been completed so far. And the last thing I had to mention here was Reed's Rink grand opening was hosted over the weekend. Attendance was good and the event was well received. And a big shout out to Kennedy Hartman for planning this. This was the first event that she had ran and planned for. So thank you to Kennedy. With that, I'm open to any questions.
Okay, questions, comments from council, Councillor Brandel.
I kind of asked this last week about the new plat asphalt. So we're just testing it to see how we're still kind of checking things out because it does say that we're starting crack filling. So
Calvin, can I borrow you to sit there with the mic? Sorry. I got some questions for you after anyway, so.
You betcha. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yeah, so we had a really good look at it. Some of it has failed, but probably 75% of it is lasting very good. So we're going to be substituting our hot pour crack filling for the Plas asphalt. So it seems like it's holding up really good.
okay, anything
And-
different that you have to do to make it hold up even better, or that's
No,
just our weather?
you're always going to get some cracks. Some of it has cracked. Like going across the road, you'll never be able to fix those cracks. They'll always crack. The ground heaves and thaws, or like the frost heaves it up and stuff like that. The long cracks down the road are performing very well. So if we can get 75% of it sticking throughout a season, yeah, it's really good.
Okay, well, that's good news.
Okay, Councillor Adams.
Just on that, so you were concerned before about like old ones where you basically peel it up. This isn't peeling at all? On those,
A little bit of it has. I'm going to say maybe about 15% of it has peeled up, but that's places where it's been wet all spring, and we've been like, it gets wet and then freezes, and then we hitting it with the graders, but on the normal streets, we're hitting with the graders and the loaders with the UVs, and it's not peeling up at all. So
We used it in our parking lot too, at Boston Pizza, and it held up really good, better than any stuff I've used in the past.
yeah,
So I was talking to him yesterday and he mentioned too that, because they got this technology out of Germany, that the feedback they got is if they use even higher temperature, it would bind better. And so they were going to do some more of that this year and see what kind of results it had. But I'm going to do more in the parking lot because that's the best it's ever held up.
yeah, that's right. Especially with the hot pour just peels out. Our brooms on our sweepers can peel it out on a warm day. This is good and solid. And Pavit did go right to Germany and had a tour, and so they had a little bit different way of applying it, and of course hotter temperature too. So I think this year is going to turn out really good.
Okay. Councillor Drew.
Just wondering if there's any limitations with, I know we've already seen as soon as the snow is gone, people start complaining about potholes because the snow filled the potholes, obviously. So I was just curious what we're for, I want to keep calling it installation, but what are our limitations for weather-wise on getting this, the pothole
repairs.
repair?
Well, we've already started potholing. We've done a lot of potholes on Main Street.
Are you limited by weather, like by cold
oh, yeah.
weather? Okay.
Yeah, when the weather's cold, the ground's cold, and then the potholes don't stick to it. So
So that product still is the same?
we're a little bit
limitations?
early. The frost is still in the ground, but we got some nasties that we just gotta fill. So
Okay, I was just curious if.
we're also, we've got 3 asphalt plants in town this year. And for first time in all the years that I've worked here, they're gonna actually sell us hot mix. So cold mix is expensive. Actually, hot mix is cheaper than cold mix. Cold mix, we have to buy it in barrels or bulk, and it doesn't do as well. We can go right over the 2 plants that will be right in town. And we've already talked to them about getting tonnage of hot mix. So hot mix and tack oil, and this should be really good.
Thanks.
Councillor Hughes.
Another pothole question for you, just because I'm not sure on this one. How do you prioritize what gets filled when? Like, do you start with Main Street?
Well, yeah, we like to try and get the high traffic areas first
Okay,
and the bigger potholes first.
right.
So you'll see, they'll go up and down Main Street and they'll get the bigger ones, but not necessarily the little ones. So we've only got so much mix, and we just prioritize the high traffic areas first. So it'll be Main Street and your 2/6 Aves and everything like that, and the bigger potholes. And then we'll start getting into the smaller potholes. And then once the frost is out of the ground, then we'll start using our infrared heater, and it does bigger patches, but it does a nicer job. So they stick a little bit better, but we need a little bit warmer weather for
Yeah.
that. And the frost out of the ground days, so.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions, comments from council? I got a few. Calvin, so, you guys are still running 2 people short in that department, right? So 2 out of 6. I'm just curious, it's a busy time of year. So steaming there, are we kind of caught up on that?
Yep.
So we've got all of our water flowing in the right direction. We got some days that are coming below 0, but I guess a lot of the melt is already gone. So now the focus, you got street sweeping, you got pothole repairs. I guess is there ability to get different contractors to help with some of that stuff and take the load off? Like, our guys have been working like 12-hour days and doing some stuff there that I'm just wondering if there's capacity to take some pressure off and still get caught up.
Sweeping, no, nobody has a big sweeper. They got these little brooms that go on skids, steers and stuff like that.
Okay.
They can't do streets stuff. Potholing, we could hire a couple of, actually, we just did a couple of interviews, so hopefully get a couple more guys here right away. But we could possibly farm it out. It'll be expensive, but it is an option.
I am just curious what our options are there, because you don't want to kill the team, but we still got to keep up on some of the stuff that's going
Well,
on there, right?
right now, we're kind of in a lull. So we've finished all our steaming. We're not plowing streets anymore. So we can spend some time with our own guys doing potholes. We'll catch up on the potholes. By that time, we'll be on to the boulevards. We've already started sweeping. We've pulled our 2 sweepers out and got them on. Now we're just sweeping without water right now, because otherwise the lines and the jets freeze up really easy.
Because it's too cold still.
Yeah, it's still too cold, but we're out there getting the bulk of it off. And then once this frost starts coming out, we got a little window. Then we'll get the little broom out, start sweeping the boulevards, and then keep the big brooms going. So I'm pretty confident we can keep up without burning out the guys.
Okay, good to know. Councillor Hughes.
You're just saying that you guys are in a little bit of a lull right now. Do you happen to know if you guys have any plans to take the decorations off the tree in Citizens Park?
We are going to
During
get that
the-
off before spring.
Wonderful. I'm happy to hear
Yes.
that. Thank you.
We had a little break, so we got the snowflakes down
Perfect.
a little bit later than normal, but yeah, that's next on the list is
Awesome. Great.
decorate the tree.
Yes, yeah, lots of fun. And I do have a other question for Roland. On here, it said that we had tentative dates for community cleanup. Just wondering what month those would be in. Are we looking at something for April, or will that be in May?
Oh, that I'd have to get back to you on.
Okay.
I know Jill is kind of organizing some of that stuff, so.
Okay, and will we have multiple
It's
dates?
typically always in May for a week. long.
Usually May, okay. Okay,
What's that? I was gonna say
yeah,
the
there's a
second
lot
too,
of,
but-
lot of garbage out there, so definitely wanting to address that, but yeah, okay, thank you.
While we're talking about garbage, the recycle center, just so you know, we did get a hold of the 2 high schools and they are interested in doing that cleanup again. So we'll get the 2 high schools in, and it's I donate $1,000 to their grad. So it's the 2 high schools that do it for grad. One cleans the inside of the recycle depot, all the garbage from the winter, and the other group cleans the outside and on along trees and stuff like that. And they're both interested, so we're getting them booked. So
Excellent. Roland, question, quick question on the tax sale stuff. So you said we're moving towards next steps there because we had some properties that didn't sell during the tax sale. What are the next steps?
Currently, we're looking at, I would say, not outright ownership, but becoming an interested party there and then moving to realtor or that kind of avenue, taking it over and then possibly taking it on ourselves and selling it and recouping the funds that way. There's a
Okay.
couple of options on the table there. That's the one we're leaning towards, but we're still in discussions with the lawyer on some other avenues there.
Okay.
We did do that previously. I think it was not last year, but the year before, after property went to auction and didn't sell. So
Okay. Okay, Councilor Ferguson.
I've been hearing some feedback about Rennie Hall Plaza and the fencing around it. Do we know when we're going to resume construction on that area?
that's short away. I got Kush here, so I know we're lining up some stuff coming right up.
I believe the contractor is going to do some test hole by the end of this month and to determine how the frost depth is in that area. And based on that, he will schedule the work.
Okay.
Yeah, because now it involves compaction. It's usually a best practice to schedule it after the frost is out.
Okay.
Okay, so that would likely be sometime in May or
End of
June?
May.
End of May, okay.
Yeah.
What's your estimated schedule of completion ballpark? I know you have to wait for this to happen first, but do you have an end date that is the furthest away possible that by then it will be done?
I would say end of July,
Okay.
Okay.
weather dependent though. Yeah.
Can I ask too that, that whole downtown plan was something that previous council looked at. And so I'd ask administration that sometime in the next few weeks ahead, that we could bring that again. We've got some extra grant money just for council to kind of look at that and see exactly what we're getting, what we're doing.
Yeah, so we're bringing it next week.
Okay. Councilor Graham.
Roland, you probably don't have the answer for this, but you're in the hot seat and the two people that do have the answer probably aren't here. So I was doing site tours today at the MRC and also was trying to use the MRC as a drop-in. Around that same time, I heard from numerous user groups and other people at drop-in. There's a concern that we had a funeral last Saturday at the MRC, which the blue flooring was laid down for. And there's a farmer's market this weekend at the MRC. So we decided to leave half the flooring down to save time for putting it out next weekend. So now we've taken a multi-million-dollar facility and turned away minor baseball, turned away soccer, possibly turned away all the drop-in stuff. So we leave half the floor down. It doesn't make sense to me. And I didn't have a good answer for anyone who was asking me. So I'm asking administration, what's the answer to why we would do something like that? And I understand you probably don't have it, but I needed to ask that question.
Okay, we'll look into it. I can get back to you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Councilor Adams.
Just one thing back to the auction sale that we had. With the lack of turnout on that and response, is that a normal thing that we face? Or was this more having to do with having such a small bunch in one of the auctions and we should have moved it to the larger one?
For my entire time being here and having the auctions almost every year, I've never seen a person.
We usually don't get
come in
anything going
person
on.
to-
in auction.
Yeah, we've tried to bolster engagement there. I think probably part of the challenge there is even when people are looking for information, the town's not a realtor. I don't have the specs on the house. I don't know how many bedrooms, what shape it in. When you come and you're buying as is at the, what the piece of paper on the property says. So it's an address and a lot block plan. And that's as far as, the information that is.
And that's where we've had better success in the past. We're basically securing ownership and then vending it through a realtor, through traditional means, right?
We're not securing ownership on it, where it just goes to the realtor next, right? We don't own it.
Well, generally, I don't outright buy it. We'll take legal, would be somewhat of a legal ownership where we don't actually outright own it, but we're just an interested party that has the
Yeah.
legal right to take on the task of selling. it.
Interested party that has control.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just make a comment that it was nice to hear back from the Minister of Transportation. I think we made that request about 2 years ago. Basically say, none of your business. So I don't even know what to say to that. So I don't know, what do we tell the public and where do we go? So the frustration is highways has been, I keep getting questioned and commented and lots of activity around the comments around, that intersection from Main Street going over to Tim Hortons. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that that's part of the right of way within the Highway 2 stuff that they'll be doing. And so there's limited how much time we can spend in that. Technically, we're not supposed to. And so we're excited that after the 3 years ago when they made the announcement that Highway 2 might see some activity this year, we'll get those pieces done, but we've been championing for Highway 88. Have not made any headway there. Our last ditch attempt there was to say, okay, well, show us what's worse, because we challenge you to find something that's worse, and we'll go there and take pictures of that, because our residents and us feel like we have one of the worst highways in the province. So them telling us, sorry, we're not going to share that information with you. We've had lots of public pushing back on that and saying, hey, addressing the minister, addressing the MLA. We haven't made a lot of headway. So I guess we'll continue to advocate, but realistically, I'm not really sure what other avenue we would take on that one. And we'll see where that goes. Councillor Adams.
Part I don't understand on this is we do have a right to know what they're doing and where they're doing it, as we're citizens of Alberta as well. So for them to throw back at us, it's none of our business on what they're doing. I think it absolutely is our business to understand what it is. And I think we should be writing a letter back to tell them that. It's not necessarily justify what you're doing to us. It's what is the priority over us, so we can see what it is and understand it better.
Well, I thought was at the bare minimum, ask them for a capital plan. What I find interesting in our discussions that we've had with them previously, like we have a 10-year capital plan, so we can tell you the bulk of what we're doing over the next 10 years. I can tell you every road that is the next priority of what we're doing over the next 10 years. They mandate and legislate that we have to have a 3-year operational plan. And yet half the time I can't understand what they're doing for capital this year. So I just don't understand how that works. Kind of do understand how that works, but it's kind of frustrating that that is how it works. So, definitely we could entertain sending another letter back and basically saying, hey, listen, at the very least, can you share your capital plan with us, or where you're headed, where you're prioritizing? If you have a priority piece, where do we fit in that priority? Try that angle again, but I just, we shouldn't really give up, and it doesn't take that much time to write a letter. So we should probably make a motion to that effect. That we direct administration to write a letter back to the Minister of Transportation, asking for clarity on this year and future years' capital investment on highways throughout Alberta. Councillor Adams, I felt like you're making that motion. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Last one I had some questions about the downtown revitalization as well, but Kush answered those, so we'll wait to see some more stuff on that next week. And I just want to pass on to the town, a couple of things. So first off, I get too that we're limited on capacity. We're trying to fill our positions just as much as everybody else is. And, in my other business life, I'm struggling every day to fill positions. And so I get the stress of that. I also get the council on this side is saying, listen, the world is open again, and things are looking for normal, and we want to have opportunities available for our residents to take part in. And as FCSS is doing these family nights, things are happening. I got lots of good feedback about Kennedy's mini stick tournament that she did on the weekend. So I just want to say to the staff, appreciate everything they're doing. As much as we can keep doing those types of events, those community things, that's really something that's came up in our strategic planning that council is very passionate about. Even leaving the ice in for a couple extra months there to encourage use. I get though that those same people are supposed to be flipping over to parks, and snow is coming, and then we're seeing garbage, and then it snows again, and it's definitely an interesting time, and it's a trying time for staff to try and figure out how all these pieces work. But I just want to say, keep doing what you're doing, and we appreciate everything they're doing, because I think that's what's important, is that we have to have opportunities, use our facilities to create events, to get back to normal, because for the mental health of everyone that's out there, I think it's what's needed. So I know it's frustrating for staff, but we appreciate it. Thank you. I'll pass it along. If there is nothing else, we'll jump into the management task list on page 6 of our package. So
I do have a couple of updates.
Okay, give it.
To share. So High Prairie School Division, so the third down on the list there. High Prairie School Division bus exit. Administration will be meeting with the High Prairie School Division staff on site to go over options on April 21st. So that is moving along. Council Code of Conduct. Admin will be looking at bringing this forward shortly. Fee structure for planning is scheduled for next week's meeting. Alberta Parks Agreement is also scheduled for next week's meeting. And the process change for enforcement is also scheduled for next week's meeting.
Okay, lots happening. Questions, comments from council? Sounds like next week's gonna be a long one. If there's none, motion to accept the management task list as information. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we'll jump into committee updates. Start with intermunicipal. We were supposed to have a meeting here, but the MD asked to delay it till June. And so I think that we're still waiting for a date to finalize. We had thrown some out and kind of went back and forth, but I don't think we're finalized yet. Watershed.
Got to find the button. We had a meeting out in High Prairie. It's much the same as what it was last time, mainly updates on what they had coming in and a review to bring all the rest of the new counselors back into catch them up with the rest of it. They're supposed to be starting to get into their regular business here right away and budget and all that fun stuff coming through. And it was a pretty short meeting.
Okay. Any questions on that? Okay, Chamber.
Meetings next week.
Alberta North Central Alliance, Councillor Graham and I attended a meeting in Canuso yesterday. And so the big news that came across is Big Lakes County, we kind of take turns spearheading different things, and it could, you know, realistically, there's not an admin for that, so it's a min of whoever organization kind of takes it on. Similar to how we did stuff in Tri-Council previously, where town would take on a town project, MD would take on an MD project. And so Jordan, their CAO over there for Big Lakes County, took on a project to apply for a grant for us for $200,000 for a collaboration grant. We're successful in getting it. So it's big news for us. Our next step, we put together yesterday an RFP for some strategic planning and some consultation pieces that'll help coordination with the group as we move forward. And so the group decided on some parameters around that and the scope of what we want it to be. And so realistically, there'll be something going on Alberta Purchasing Connection next week, and we're hoping to be doing some strategic planning coming up in June, which will kind of form the direction of where we're going for some action items for the group. So any questions on that? Okay, housing.
We met March 22nd. As many people may be aware, the Housing Authority requisitions the town of Slave Lake, the MD of Lesser Slave River, and the MD of Opportunity in order to help sustain the Seniors Lodge. And as it turns out, there was a slight underbilling for the requisition to the MD of Lesser Slave River last year. So in order to make it fair for the other two entities, there will be a check cut back to the other two remaining ones, proportionate to the underbilling of the Lesser Slave River. So the town of Slave Lake will be receiving roughly a $6,000 check back. We had the presentation of the 2021 audited financials. All told, everything is good. On the housing side, we pretty much broke even. On the lodge side, we ended up with a surplus of around $160,000 on a budget of approximately $2.5 million. However, this is not money in hand because it includes amortization of deferred contributions to grant money that build the lodge, as well as general amortization. On the lodge side, we are left with roughly $145,000 that we are able to allocate to reserves. $50,000 will be getting allocated to future capital maintenance and about $95,000 to 2022 capital maintenance, the bulk of which will be used to upgrade and replace HVAC units. We had several concerns last year about the excessive heat during the summer in the lodge, so that should help alleviate that. We are also selling our office. Several months ago, our office was moved into the northwest so that we could be closer to our housing units. This means that our previous modular office is for sale via closed bid. Details are in this week's paper if anyone would like more details. Wait lists. As of February 28th, Vanderbilt Lodge has a wait list of 4, senior self-contained 3, the Legion Manor 9, social and family housing 30. It's important to note, though, that not all these individuals are ready to move in at this point. Rather, many of them are anticipating a move in the near future and want to get on the list now. As for vacant units, Vanderbilt Lodge has 11 vacant units. There are 15 vacant units in our social and family housing. However, many of these units are undergoing routine maintenance between move-ins. And that's the update.
Questions? I see none. Tri-Council Health.
So we had our meeting last week and there are just some statistics that I thought were interesting. So the hospital and clinic right now have a patient panel of approximately 12,000. So that's not 12,000 visits, that's 12,000 individual different patients they've seen over the last 12 months. So that's really interesting, especially given that we're a community of 7,000 and I know not all of us see a doctor regularly. So it's interesting to see the service area that our clinic and hospital are providing, especially to the neighboring communities. We're sitting around a 5% no-show rate. So we've been asked to remind the public, if you are watching, that if you are going to no-show, to try and cancel your appointment ahead of times, because this really does affect staffing. As far as the times to see a doctor, we're looking around 14 days and a nurse practitioner is 20. The reason why the nurse practitioner is longer is because we have a significant shortage of staff within that particular area. We also have 2 new nursing students that are going to be doing a practicum in our community coming in at the end of April and staying for a month. The committee is also working on updating a health, like a health minute for the public. This would be an update on the clinic, the hospital, and some in-progress initiatives. Also, just to note that the reason why there are some shortages still in the clinic is because we're looking at the AHS rules haven't changed with regards to COVID. So if you are sick or exhibiting symptoms, there is a longer wait time out before you can go back into work. So the doctors, nurses, and all the other staff, support staff working there are still battling time out for illness and things like that.
Okay. Councillor Hughes.
Just curious, how do you guys plan to share the health minute with the community?
We're going to be talking to communications. And I think it would be similar to the vlog, the mayor and council update type of
Okay, so the town of
format.
Slave Lake will
Yeah, the town
essentially
of
share
Slave
it.
Lake would be doing that on behalf of the Tri-Council Health Committee. And then that way the town and the MD could share that. And then that would just kind of, I think we saw that there was a bit of a missing connection between healthcare and the public. And so this brief update might just bridge some of that mystery.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, so a couple of things I'll add to that is that one, when it comes to communication side of things, AHS is this giant machine. So if they want to say anything that someone in the public might hear, has to go through multiple departments and up to communications, and they filter it down. So by the time it gets back to you, A, it's either older, and B, it actually doesn't tell you a whole lot. And so what I always found from my experience was that we don't have the same restrictions. And so I'd encourage you to use that for it. The other thing is that I think it's important, one of the things I've heard during the election, I've heard in the past or whatever, one of the complaints that comes from residents is that, everything comes from the mayor, and sometimes we'd like to hear some other councillors. So I think committees is a perfect example or opportunity to be able to use that. Bryce using, that's what I pushed last week. Bryce did a fantastic job on doing some of the budget stuff updates, that we need to take more of a rotation in some of that stuff and share what's going on, whether it be tourism, whether it be housing or library. Those different opportunities, make sure that you're doing it and just coordinate with Jordan. He's got lots of free time and is always like, hey, yeah, stop by. But they're not too comprehensive to be able to put together and throw on there.
Yeah, I think that's what they're looking for with the healthcare minute, is just to provide a bit of connection there and give everybody an update. And every second request seems to go to Jordan now. Sorry.
The other thing I will say that 2 of the big projects on health is centered around the fact that the group is advocating strongly for some chemotherapy in town, as well as we have an opportunity to increase or to provide enhanced surgical services, and we have a provider that's interested in doing it. The problem with both of those is that they obviously require operational funding. And so there's business cases that are going, being prepared by AHS. So we continue to push and prod, but there's not a lot the group can do until those business cases are accepted by AHS. And then we can advocate to the minister to say, hey, like, listen, we've justified that this is something, we've got an operational plan. We have some rough idea what the costs are. Please provide the funding, please endorse this, and things can move ahead. It doesn't happen quickly, and it is frustrating how long it takes, but I will say that those two things are going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and they don't just happen by will alone. If it did, we would already have these things in place. The will of the committee is to get the other parties working on it is to have the chemotherapy and the surgical initiative go through. And I know we're frustrated with the timeline, but we're assured that the timeline is very standard in dealing with AHS. So we'll continue to provide updates as we have them.
The other thing I will say it's nice is it's not just a one-sided push. It's not just a community trying to do it. You've got the elected officials that are very much interested. There's unanimous support coming from the three entities and the Tri-Council as a whole. But what's even better is that the local administration and leadership from AHS side, from the provincial side, are saying, yeah, like, these are great opportunities. We need to make this happen. So hopefully that translates into something, and we'll see where we end up. Tourism.
We meet Thursday, but we did receive a $19,000 grant from Travel Alberta COVID Relief Fund. So that'll be great with operating costs and some planning stuff. So we're looking forward to discussing that more Thursday and reporting back.
Library.
Yes, so we are currently working on getting the Slave Lake Library back to pre-pandemic operations, and the goal was for that to be basically happening by mid-April. So we are on track for that. We are still displaying local artwork by local artist Tori Hunwick in the library. Some of the library staff have attended a newcomers initiative meeting at the beginning of March. We have 2 new staff members that have been hired at the library, and all of the library staff have also attended a first aid course as well. And this past month, we have had just over 1,000 participants in a variety of our programming.
Okay, questions, comments? Naming advisory.
Have not met.
Community futures.
A couple things. They're getting more loan action lately, which is great for the community. Honestly, it gets some investment going. Spark the North is coming up on May 26th at Triangle Hall in the County of Big Lakes. Speakers and sessions on the issues employers are facing with hiring and keeping employees. The event is offering collaboration, insight, and solutions to the labor shortage. April lunch and learns are being hosted by Community Futures in partnership with Business Link. They're free to attend and offer a great resource for both the new and existing business owners. Lemonade Day is ramping up, and they're looking eager for mini entrepreneurs coming. They're going to be posted on Facebook for any updates there. Digital Service Squad, that's the new program offering from Community Futures. They offer support, one-on-one advice, one-on-one help to better the digital footprint of businesses in the Slave Lake region. The service is free, comes with other supports such as online store setup support, online recognition, and more. The program is important for our region as it allows outsiders and locals to see and access our services and products and helps promote those local businesses in our community. They're also launching the beautification loan project in the MD of Opportunity. They're also looking at other areas that are going to be launching this as well. And yeah, that's about it for Community Futures. Oh, and we're prepping for executive director review, so that'll be fun.
Questions, comments? Community Education Committee.
So the CEC hosted a welcome back in-person luncheon for students the beginning of March. It was very well attended. The committee is currently looking into some new initiatives to promote health and wellness for students. We hope to be launching those mid-May. There was a virtual open house on March 9th, giving the opportunity for students to check out their potential courses. First aid and safety courses have been held at the college the past few weeks for the community. They also held a Aiming for Wellness Together online event with Jordan Tutu on April 6th. The Northern Lakes College Convocation will be held at the MRC on June 3rd. They're seeing uptick in trades classes as well, and life skills programming will continue to run throughout the year. Academic upgrading is also seeing uptick. There are changes to learner income supports that have just become effective as of April 1st, and the Stepping Forward program is seeking enrollments right away for September.
Questions? Homeless Coalition.
So we've had a couple meetings. The biggest news is that programming is winding up for the season as of April 18th. Regarding the COVID isolation facility, since the outbreak that we had in around January, we've had 0 COVID participants in our isolation facility, so that's good news. A few weeks back, we substantially tightened up our rules around breaches of conduct. This has definitely helped, along with the placement of cameras. As of April 1st, we had 1,423 stays by 101 different individuals, averaging 9.4 stays a night. And last Friday, we had a presentation from Sylvia Chewy from the Tamarack Institute on the topic of collective impact. So what is collective impact? Essentially, it is a disciplined form of multi-sector collaboration with the goal of high impact community change. It is a recognition that in order to impart meaningful change, that it takes a community-wide approach with numerous stakeholders from diverse backgrounds. So as a coalition, we recognize that we need a community-wide approach in order to truly help eliminate homelessness in our community. Next steps, once our programming wraps up for the season, we start planning for the 2022-2023 winter season.
Okay. Questions? Children's Resource Center.
A couple things on the CAO update. He already kind of summarized in there for the programs in Slave Lake that have gone up in attendance, and things are going great for that. Another one, the meeting we were supposed to have was canceled. The main reason for that is we've had 2 directors resign from council or from the CRC council. We also had a brief meeting on budget discussions on what we had and what actuals are. Their year end was March 30th, and we're coming into the next cycle here on the next meeting, and that's coming up. We also held a policy review meeting, of which the main focus is on HR policy and trying to get that cleaned up for the CRC. That's it.
Questions? MPC.
No update.
ISDAB hasn't had anything. Waste.
Have not met.
Airport.
So we had a meeting yesterday. We had our 2021 audited financials presented. We posted a $19,000 surplus. However, once again, this is not necessarily money in hand due to amortization and loan payments. Overall, though, we had a much better year in 2021 compared to 2020. Revenue was up nearly $100,000. At the end of the year, we are left with approximately $70,000 that we can allocate to reserves. We allocated about $13,000 to our operating reserve to bring it back up to $50,000. In 2020, we had to dip into our operating reserve to balance our budget. So it's nice that we can bring this back up to the full $50,000. We also allocated $35,000 to our equipment reserve and $22,000 to our capital reserve. We're also planning on buying a liquid de-icer this year for the runway. Currently, the airport is using a mix of granular and liquid. However, there are some issues with applying it, and with the current setup, they can only apply it at a speed of approximately 2 kilometers an hour, which takes about 2 hours to fully apply. With a proper liquid de-icer, the application will be much more efficient and can be shaved down to about 20 minutes. Shoreline protection continues to be an issue. In 2020, we lost nearly 40 feet of shoreline due to high water. And to be blunt, we cannot afford another year of high water, or we risk the shoreline seriously threatening our runway. We've been looking at various options to stabilize the shoreline. However, all the engineered options come back at around $4.5 million or more, which is not feasible. So to date, we have found no grants available for this. We are working with engineering firms on cheaper options, but haven't had much success yet. And just so the town is aware, this does have the potential to come back as a liability to the town and the MD if we are unable to find a cost-effective solution.
Okay. Questions, comments? Legacy hasn't met their protective services. And Northern Alberta Mayor's Rees Caucus, Northern Alberta Leaders hasn't met yet. Motion to accept the verbal committee updates as information. Thank you, Councillor Gramlich. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. So we'll jump into reports and new business. So we've got a service level discussion on dust control. Calvin.
All righty. Another topic that brings a lot of traction is dust. I've got a pamphlet here that we are going to be putting it out to the public. I've got to do a couple of corrections in here, but once we do the corrections, we'll be putting it out to the public and stuff like that. So basically, what is dust control? Dust control is an agent that we put on the roads, and it retains the moisture so that the dust doesn't get airborne and float around and stuff like that. We use calcium chloride. It's a fairly inexpensive product and does very well. It also acts as a road stabilizer. So years ago, we didn't use much dust control, calcium, and the roads really take a beating. So it helps to stabilize the road once the frost is out of the ground, of course, eh? So where is dust control? Where do we do it? We do it on all our gravel. There's a couple corrections in there. The big ones are Second Ave, Northwest Industrial, Northeast Industrial, the road into Gloryland. We still got Gloryland in there, but we got to pull that out because it's pavement now. So that saves us a little bit. We got about 15 kilometers of road that we do with dust control. So how long does it take to complete dust control? So first of all, we have to wait till the frost gets out of the ground. Once the frost is out of the ground, then we can start shaping up the roads. That typically takes a week and a half, something like that. And then we put do our gravel application. Normally, we have enough money to do half to 3/4 of our gravel roads. So we just alternate every year and spread the gravel around. Once we get the gravel on the roads, we shape it up another couple of weeks, and then we hammer the dust control right behind it. So as soon as the gravel's down, we dress up the roads, and then we put the dust control down. After that, then we have to maintain it. So in the summertime, if you grade gravel roads with dust control and don't use a water truck to spray it on it, you're just losing your dust control. So we got to hire a water truck and spray the road, soak it down a little bit, and then grade it. Towards the end of the year, we get a little bit slacker on hiring the water truck because it's fairly costly, and so we'll just grade it towards the end of the year. How often does dust control take place in Slave Lake? We do it once a year. We looked into doing it twice a year, before the frost and then after the frost, about $25,000 difference. And it really wouldn't do a whole lot of good. It would settle the dust a little bit, but once you get that freeze thaw coming out, the frost coming out of the ground, you typically lose the dust control. So that's why we do it after the frost is out of the ground, shape up the roads, put our gravel down, hammer the dust control, and it's usually pretty good for the summer. So in a nutshell, that's about dust control.
Questions from council? Councillor Adams.
On the Gloryland chunk, is there really a point to doing that anymore?
No, that's why I say I've got to do a correction in
Oh,
this.
but even the gravel part, I mean.
Oh, yeah. It still acts as road stabilizer. So we spent we did that road ourselves a few years back. And we probably spent about $60,000 on that road. And then our guys rebuilt the road itself. So we want to keep that road in a good shape. It gets washboard a little bit, but the base is really good. So calcium does act as a road stabilizer as well. So anywhere in town, the roads and everything are built on muskeg. So if we didn't continue to treat that with a gravel application and dust control, the muskeg would slowly seep up into it. So it's for the little bit of money it takes to do that road. Yeah, I would keep on doing her.
Thanks.
Other questions, comments from council? Okay, so realistically, usually, I should point to the fact that ground's usually thawed kind of the end of May, first part of June, depending on what Mother Nature does. Then you guys would do some shaping, so the average person is not going to see some calcium dust control stuff till mid to late June.
Mid-June to late June. This year we could be a little bit earlier. There's not as much frost as we figured there was. So hopefully we'll get at it a little bit earlier.
Sounds good. Entertain a motion to accept the dust control report as information. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Kelvin.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to talk about splash parks. This will be an interesting discussion.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. The purpose of this report is to provide a strategic plan to council for the spray park. Administration initiated preliminary strategic level planning after discussions related to spray park were introduced during the budget sessions. Spray park vendors were contacted to request budgetary information along with some conceptual drawings, which are attached in attachment first. A budget amount of $500,000 is allocated for a new spray park through reserves in 2022 budget package. We explored two options to verify the feasibility of the spray park. Either it could be by refurbishing the existing splash park at Shooter Park, or we can install a brand new spray park at Hilda Eben Park. There are some challenges with option one. Number one challenge is the location of the spray park is below the road elevation, which would make us difficult to tie into the sewer. And also, as per the regulation, we cannot continue cannot continue discharging effluent, which would be the water that goes through that process because it's treated with chloramines, and we cannot discharge directly to the Sawridge Creek unless it's dechlorinate. In order to dechlorinate, there are two options. You can throw in some pucks, and the pucks will dechlorinate the water when it comes in contact. But the effectiveness is really not that great when you are talking about a lot of volume. Second option is you can build a holding tank that would hold the water for 2-3 days and let it naturally dissipate the chloramines in the water, and then it's safe to discharge. And the third option, as I said, we would have to tie into our sewer system. And as the elevations is a bit challenging, we would have to install kind of like mini lift station, which would add up a lot of cost. The other option is to install a brand new spray park at Hilda Eben location. And if you look at attachment 2, we looked at 3 different locations that where we can place the spray park within the Hilda Eben Park. All the locations are chosen in a way where we can bring in the water and sewer line in a shortest possible way. We have a couple of right-of-ways close to a Parkdale Way and 9th Street. So those are the 2 locations where we can utilize those right-of-ways to pull in services. And the third option is utilize the existing old skate park pad and pull in services from 6th Street Southeast. That location would be most feasible because it's closest to the road, closest to the parking spot, and also provides like a natural surveillance for enforcement agencies.
Still keep some of our green space too, like it's not
Yes.
taken away from the park.
So we can, I mean, like, our recommendation is based on these options that we explored. This options that the location that's close to the 6th Street Southeast would be the most feasible. And the cost to pull in services would be lower in the range of, I would say, $150,000. It's based on ballpark information.
Okay, let's jump into some questions and debate here. Councillor Adams.
Okay, I'm confused as far as the effluent discharge into the river. If we were to actually, I do not remember ever in my life seeing enough water come off that spray park that it would fill up where the old arena used to, or ice rink used to be there. And then it would flow over to the river, right? So how are you supposed to treat that by a catch? And why? Because it's getting through all that land already and soaking through. It's not making it to storm drains. Even at Hilda Eben, if we put it over there, I cannot see water running across the ground and flowing into our storm drains. So what regulation is that, I guess, is the other part of the question.
So the regulation is, because we have a storm catch basin, that Shooter Park is located in a dry storm pond, right? So we have a storm catch basin there. And the lowest point of that park is tied to that catch basin. So even if the water is spilled around the park, it will drain into the catch basin, and that will eventually end up in the Storage Creek.
Yeah, but so does everybody watering their lawn along the creek too.
But that's, yeah, and I mean, like, that's the regulation that.
What is the regulation?
Regulation
I tried
is.
to find it, I couldn't find it.
So regulation is we cannot direct discharge any water that has chloramines into the creek or the water
Not
body.
direct discharging though, are we?
We are.
There's a drain
That's
there.
considered
There is a
direct
drain
discharge?
that goes, so there is a drain through that park and there is an outfall to the creek.
That's why you don't see this overflow, like we're draining to it.
So there's a drain over right
Yeah, but
now by the splash park that
Yes.
literally goes out to the creek.
It would
Yes.
catch in, whenever you get the big rainstorms, it catches inside where that, in the park for a while, and then it would flow out. I get that. But from the park, from this water running, I've never seen water come in. there.
Okay, so, sorry to jump in here.
Go for it.
Right from the spray park, there's a catch basin right on the corner of the pad. So all the water is the pad is sloped to would be the northeast corner, and there's a catch basin right there. So it goes into that catch basin, out to another catch basin in the middle of that field that drains that field. That's an actual dry pond, a dry storm pond. And right from that goes directly to our outfall and right into the creek.
Over land or through?
Underground.
Underground.
Literally have pipes catching it right now, pumping it
Yes.
into the creek.
Yes. So all the water that goes from the spray park, the regulation says we can't discharge any water. So even if we have a water break in the roads and it's going down the curbs, stuff like
Yeah, I
that,
get that. Yeah.
especially with chloramines. Chloramines last a lot longer, even though they're acting with the soil. Chlorine, straight chlorine, by the time it went down the street, it's dissipated. Chloramines last a lot longer. So they came out with the regulation about a year ago that
They
you
being the
cannot,
province of Alberta Environment and Parks.
Alberta
Yeah.
Environment and Parks, yes.
environment and parks, that we cannot discharge any water into any water body with chloramines in it.
Can it be controlled through controlling that pipe? Like the drain?
You would have to either like Kush said, a storage tank and have some contact time so that it would sit there for a while before you discharge it, or dechlorination pucks. So that's what we use.
But
in
what
a
about just stopping it from getting to the river? Down through the pipe?
Where does it go then?
Then where
So where does it go?
Right where the ice rink goes in the winter, and then it would be gone, and just evaporate, and go into the ground.
So you say plug the manhole and basically have it go over land.
Yeah, it would flood that area pretty quick.
The
Yeah, we are-
splash park
That
would
little
flood it?
spray park that goes pretty
We are-
much all day long.
So we are talking about adding additional features. So if you look at that conceptual
Yeah.
drawing that was submitted, it includes 21 features, which would generate almost 460 liters per minute of flow.
If it's all running at the same time.
Yeah.
And
What's our current usage on that in a month? Or do we?
On that
meter
little one that we
currently?
have, I could check into it.
I'm just curious.
We wouldn't have a meter. How would we know?
Yeah, it's metered.
Is it?
Yep. Yep, I could look into it and see, but that little park puts out a lot of water.
Gets used a lot.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's a very busy little park.
Okay, so are we already on the radar of our environment? Like if we hadn't talked about doing a spray park for $500,000 this year, because this is really driven by council.
No, we're already taking precautions into it. We're looking at little applicators that'll go right down in the catch basin and stuff. We have to do this, and it's not just the spray parks. Like another, for instance, is the fire department when they're doing fire training. They're spraying water out. They got to dechlorinate that water too. So it's the environment is getting very picky on the chloramines. Being that we're already have that spray park in place, we're looking into getting some way of putting pucks in there. Right now, we just throw a bunch of pucks down in the catch basin. You got to change the pucks every once in a while. It's not a huge deal, but.
Okay, Councilor Brandon.
So is that a short-term thing? Is this an either or? If we go with the new one with 21 features at Hilda Eben, are we just doing away with the other one?
We can leave the existing one as it is, have a brand new one at the Hilda Eben, and that will be connected to sewer, so we don't have to worry about
Right.
dechlorinating the water.
Yeah, I figured.
But the
new would
old
be up
one,
to
yes, we
code, but-
will have to get some kind of apparatus, self feeder, or continue to throw pucks in it. We will
Yeah.
have to do something.
And that's
we can
sustainable
keep the old
long-term?
one,
Yes,
Long-term.
yeah.
We
Okay,
just can't add to it because the volume of water is going to be an issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Other questions, comments? Councilor Ferguson?
So in other communities, I often see them using existing waterways as their sources of water. Is it an option to pull water from the river? That way we wouldn't have to worry about disposal per se.
We can look into that. You would have to refer to Alberta Environment and Parks because it all depends on, you would need a diversion license if you want to use that water from a water body. And it all depends on the volume, how much volume flows throughout the year in that creek. And based on that, they will allow us or not.
Okay, Councilor Adams.
To that comment, I was wondering the same thing. So I pulled up the pools regulation, which falls under the spray parks is in there. And it says you must use potable water.
That's what I was wondering as well, as if it had to be the
So
So we would have to add some sort of treatment to the
water you draw
that
from
we,
the.
yes.
Okay,
I thought it had to be
Sticking around the same
potable.
thing.
No, I thought it had to be potable for spray parks because it's obviously people that are using them, so.
But White Court has a pond for their lazy river, they call it. And they have a pond and there's a pump in that pond. Now, I don't know exactly if they treat the water or anything like that.
If you're doing a recirc, so that when you're catching your water, you're putting it to a lake, holding, and then you're circulating it back with like gray water capture, basically. You can do that, but then you got a whole set of regulations. I didn't bother reading it. It's in that 2014 regulation.
Another challenge with our scenario would be we have all this outfall, basically all those storm outfall. So the storm outfall would collect hydrocarbons and whatnot, dumping into the creek. And then we are trying to use that water for the spray park. So which will make it a challenge unless you treat it. And
Unless you did something like White Court.
Yeah.
Like White Court, like say they have that lazy river
I don't
and they
think
have
treat it.
a big pond. I don't know if they use treated, or as far as I know, there's a pump on the edge of the pond. It sucks the water out of the pond, goes through the lazy river and back into the pond.
I can also tell you that park isn't cheap to build and it ain't cheap to maintain. So,
Probably not,
probably
not.
Okay.
My concern on the Hilda Eben positioning is just, that one's typically older kids in there, not the little guys. And now we're going to be having it fairly close to the road edge. Is that necessarily the right choice? Should it be further back, even though it costs us more money to run it? Is it safer, or is it? I just wonder if we've looked into that piece or not. I realize that the other one goes by a roadway as well, but you've got a physical impediment to a kid running down a hill, running up a hill. And before
Sort
they
of.
hit,
I've
right?
seen kids book
Oh,
it up the
yeah.
hill, mine
Fair
included.
enough. But I mean, it's not like you're running from here to that wall with the kid,
I agree there's more of
into
a
traffic.
barrier, but
and it's a higher traffic area.
I'm a little more of the field of dreams mentality that if you build it, they will come. And if you, yes, right now it's a teenager or older kid park right now, but because there's not the features for little kids. So I would think if we could maybe put in, maybe there's fencing or something, like I feel like the plan needs a little more on the safety features wise, because I also don't want kids running out into the streets, but I think we could have the ability to make this more of a multi-use park. And then families, then you have families, you have both ends of town having a splash park, especially if we don't have to decommission the one in Schurter.
Yeah, you could move it back towards the back end. Be a little more costly to service it. That'd be about the only thing.
And we access from Parkdale then, as opposed to from.
So the challenge with the Parkdale is the right of way there, it's only like 3.5 meter wide. So we cannot house water and sewer in the same right of way. So we would have to pull sewer water from Parkdale and then one other line from basically 6th Street Southeast. So that option from servicing side, it would cost us in the range of 300 to 350,000 just to pull in services.
What about
What about
coming from 9th
fencing?
Street?
From 9th Street, it was in the middle of option A and C. C was the lowest at 150. So 9th, I would say from 9th Street, between 200, 220,000. But another challenge with that is, what if people starts parking on the 9th Street? Because that would be the shortest access using that right of way to the park.
We have no parking there.
Yeah, but just run the line further.
Could we not look at fencing though, if the main concern is safety, could there not be some fencing along there?
They're 2 blocks away from here. There's a playground that's 14 feet, 15 feet from the road, right? Like you're really overthinking this. That's a big gap of space. It's the whole entire parking lot.
Why would you take your traffic on 6th Street and traffic on the north end of 11th is totally different.
Well, like in fairness, I feel like we have, none of our
Whatever,
parks are.
whatever you
fenced.
guys figure.
And so like we can add it to say whatever, but your kids are either old enough to go there unsupervised and they shouldn't run out in the street. Or if they're too young and they go there and they're gonna run the street, you should probably supervise them. I don't know, like
Okay,
personally, that's my 2 cents. Maybe that's not political, but it's sort of common sense to me.
I'm with him.
So
Location B also has some additional challenges there too, like it is behind that hill. So that is a sledding hill, so then you're cutting off that access in the wintertime. For kids going down the hill, which it's pretty popular in the wintertime. As well, being behind the hill, there is no sightline from the road, so it kind of hides the water park itself. So part of the
Fair enough.
location C there was to bring it by the road, just so that there was a clear sight line to hopefully deter, vagrants or people who would want to vandals. Bring that more on the open. And there's an existing pad there
Yeah,
as well
you're-
that works within the area.
Doing away with that eyesore that's currently there, right? We're reusing that space for something positive.
Pretty
I think
much, yeah.
it's
We
a
wanted to
great spot.
revitalize that area. There's a concrete pad there that you can work within too. So that's already there while we don't have to cut out a little bit. And then there's the option to add, some tables and chairs for parents to sit down away from the park and watch their kids. It's close to the parking lot and it's fairly close to the playground as well. So it does create that space.
I like the idea of visibility myself. And so my ideal scenario honestly would be to put it at CJ Schurter Park. I think by putting it hill to even, and we're able to keep the other one, we now have features in 2 different parks. I think hill to even has lots of space. I don't like putting it in the back because I don't want to lose some green space. That gives opportunity for something else. I think having more parents and more visibility closer to the skate park is not going to hurt us.
Yeah.
Either. And so I think there's a lot of quick wins there. So, I like the Hill to Even Spa.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in as well, to Councillor Adams' point of, Schurter Park not being vandalized. There was actually people vandalizing picnic tables when I was driving by the other night. So I think it's going to happen anywhere, no matter what. And I do think that that park is more geared towards younger children. I would like to see us continue with that park with the features and everything we've already invested in that. But I don't see anything wrong with having the two different parks, especially for people who live on either side of town. They can walk there, use the trail system. I think it's a win-win. And I do think this has more parking, and I like the idea of setting it up properly so that there's the playground, the water, there's ample parking, picnic tables, create a nice community environment there. So just my 2
Alright.
cents.
And far as safety I understand Steve's thinking about the safety too. There's lots of spray parts that are fenced too. Put some fencing around the front, some decorative fencing, make it look nice, keep up with it and stuff like that, So.
Well, honestly, I kind of like the idea of when you were mentioning benches and stuff in between. So we have a natural barrier rather than
Natural buffer.
necessarily a fence. I don't like the idea of fencing parks. I feel like gets rid of the feel of a park.
It's supposed to be an
Welcoming
open
of a
space
pa-
feel,
of a
right?
park. Having it in both zones, northeast, southeast, being the more populated. I like that. As long as we are maintaining that other one and keeping it going, then I'm.
And I agree with Steve on as soon as you guys had mentioned the picnic tables, like I know there's a few benches that we have at the Schurter Park there, but parental seating is always seems to be a little bit of lacking. So if we could, in the designs moving forward, at least from my opinion, and maybe everyone else agrees or disagrees, but it would be nice to see some more spots and people can have lunch, stuff like that.
One more comment, and because we had our debate, was what about washroom facilities or anything like that?
Yeah.
Is that a possibility for bringing in sewer lines and that kind of stuff anyway?
Oh, definitely.
And maybe
Yeah,
we should look at
the
that.
servicing's right on 6, so.
Would be nice to look at that at the same time while we're doing this.
I do recall that was something that was brought up by a couple different residents during our election period as well, that we lack a public washroom use. So I do think we should take that into consideration in some way.
Yeah, and personally, I don't want them. And so I will tell you, as much as it's popular, that it would be nice to have all these amenities, unless they're gonna have staff that monitor those places. I don't like having open public space that people can go in and out of and nobody's monitoring what's going on, especially if they're in playgrounds, especially if they have kids. I don't think that we should have that. And so the other thing is they are not cheap. We're talking, we looked at these structures in the past, they've been anywhere between $75,000 and $200,000 for something that could be used for something that totally isn't designed for. So I would say, I think it's worth throwing some rough numbers in it so that council can look at it. But I will tell you, if our number one concern is safety, I can tell you putting washroom facilities over there for public use might not be the best use of our time unless we're going to consistently monitor them and keep an eye on them.
I see your point there too, but I also just feel that if we're going to be drawing a lot of families with young kids to the area, we need to have something at the same time, right? Well,
Agreed.
There is the
At
porta
least, yeah.
potties over there, which, we can look into depending on what we have placed and maybe move some from one area to, to have additional porta potties there. As far as bathrooms, I think we could definitely look into that later on throughout the year, but it would be outside the scope of this project and something to tie into maybe next year.
Okay, I disagree on that point. If we are going to put it in, now would be the time where we're digging up the ground and putting in pipes for it. So I would say if we're going to look at it, bring it as an option within the pricing of this project. Because if we are literally gonna dig up and tie into services, now would be the time to do it, rather than do it twice.
It just depends on the cost, right? Like if you want to keep it within the 500 grand that we have here, what are we giving up on the,
And so I think council council needs to understand, there's no way it's going to fit within the $500,000 budget, so we need other allocated money. But I think we'd be crazy not to do the information and get it and
Yeah, we
propose it.
can
and
look at
maybe we
it,
look at it in
sure.
future capital. Maybe we do it now or do whatever else, but I wouldn't just put it off and talk about it later.
I'd like to get an understanding myself of what it encompasses and what cost, what it looks like kind of thing.
Maintenance. and-
If that's, yeah, if that's possible to do.
Yeah.
I know you've been on here long enough that you got her, but I would like to
And no,
understand a little more
pricing
myself.
could have changed. You know, my ideal scenario would be totally that we'd have something over there. My problem is that realistically, we're only gonna use it for 4 months of the year if we're lucky. And we're not gonna monitor it the whole time. And we have issues trying to keep park benches, picnic tables and garbage cans in open spaces. And so because of that, like, I don't want to invest $200,000 into something that creates a whole bunch of other issues for us and our team and our staff. That all of a sudden, the comment from all the people that wanted to go use it is it's not safe to go in there. So that's my 2 cents there. That's why I'd rather just put more porta potties there.
We have an administration, you have your easy ones like your Kelowna or your Banff, where there's numerous public restrooms, but they got a bit more money than us. Can we look into like the White Courts and Peace Rivers, towns our size that have public restrooms? I don't know if those towns do. I'm just making that up, but can we look into them and see what they're doing? Because we can't just say we're not going to do something because people are bad people and they might wreck it. Like, we can't punish the whole town and make them go home to go to the washroom because a few bad apples might spray paint it or do bad things in it. Like, it'd be a nice addition for all of our parks over time, and to say no because there's bad people, then we'd never do anything.
I definitely think we can do that. And just part of the project scope though is that big operational piece and the service level change within the community services department, right? So now that we're adding public restrooms, what's the expectation? How often are we cleaning them? If they're dirty on Tuesday, do we have to wait? Like some of those other pieces. So I think when we take a look at the plan to add the bathroom, that piece is going to be one of the big component. You're going to have your capital cost, that's the upfront, but then we'll work together in the group here to see what that service level change would require on the operating side to keep that going.
I think we just like like I said, we'd all like the information. I know there's the bathroom and that was funded by Parks out at the beach. And what their service, like, that's something that's right there. I'd like to know what maybe their service levels are. I know it was very expensive to build for 2 bathrooms, but what are their service levels? How has that vandalism been? Like, that's right in our area and it is used by the same residents arguably that would be using the Hilton Even Park as well. So,
The thing is you have to have enough traffic,
yeah.
right? If you have enough traffic all the time, it's not as big a deal. It's the downtime and outside of it. So,
We
okay,
could take it back to Gary and
I like looking at-
chat with Gary, and
let's look in the
Gary
box.
will have some more insight on it. Being he's from Grand Prairie and stuff like that too, so.
If we could get some rough information, we can talk about it at committee of the whole next month. 'Cause that's what these things are designed for. Like, we don't need exact pricing. We don't need scoping everything figured out. We don't need to, in depth of this is what the new bylaw would look like and service levels or whatever else. Let's talk about the good, the bad and the ugly. There's positives and negatives to every scenario. Let's get some rough numbers around it, same as this, and discuss it next month.
So this one, the conceptual drawings that are attached with 21 features, you can get something like that size and scale for $350,000 to $400,000.
Okay.
Yeah, and then plus we would have to add 100 to 150 for services.
Okay. So the next step, so ideally would be council's okay with this location. You'd start working on actual costing for there and actual costing on a spray park, and then that would come back again for discussion.
Yes, so we would have to issue a RFP basically
Totally.
to attract vendors, and then based on their proposal, we will choose a vendor, and then these services come with design services as well. So they will design it and they will build it. So we can go through that engagement piece with council, what kind of features we want, and stuff like that. And then basically make a plan and start the construction. So this vendor, PlayQuest, is also the same vendor who got the contract for Wabasca and Calling Lake Spray Park. And they are planning to construct this year. So he said that, if we move quickly on this, they might be able to line this up. But there is also challenges with getting parts. They are looking at least 12 weeks in getting parts once the order is placed.
Okay.
Realistically, we can still construct by the end of the season, but we won't be able to use it until next year.
Operational until next
Yeah.
year. Okay. Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Counselor Brandel.
I will make the motion. Be it resolved that council directs administration to proceed with option 2, installation of a brand new spray park at Hilda Eben Park.
Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. And I'll make an additional motion that we task administration to bring some options, costs, and service level impacts to adding additional washroom features in our parks. Let's start with Hilda Eben. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, gentlemen. Okay. Council compensation discussion. So we have the report here that came from the committee. And it's in here. So I'll start by saying, this is always awkward because, you know, in the past, I've never actually been in a situation where I had to vote on it for the council that it was in. It was always a future one, and whatever happened, happened. That being said, I would like to make a recommendation. During budget discussions here, one of the things that we're targeting is to make sure that we are fair in the marketplace. That it makes sense, that we're competitive with what's going on. And, you know, the exercise of this council compensation is the exact same thing. We go out and we look and say, what's fair, what does make sense, what's everybody else doing? We're currently undergoing in a budgeted money, working with a contractor to help us understand that we're doing the exact same thing for the rest of our staff. And there are going to be budget impacts likely that are going to come from that. And as we go out and we have challenges recruiting people, we have to make sure that we're paying a fair wage or being competitive, or we're not going to attract people. And council can have all the vision and strategic planning that they want, but if we don't have resources of people on the other side to do the work, it becomes really pointless sitting in this chair. As such, it's my understanding that our contractor is putting some work on that, and we will likely see that sometime in late May, early June at the latest. And I would suggest that council push this off and discuss it all at the same time, and look at doing it for the entire organization and just not one piece that seems to be ourselves.
Are you suggesting that they also review part of this?
No, I'm
No.
just saying that we already have the information, but before we make a decision on our own piece, I think we make a decision on the whole piece because that all affects taxpayers. It all affects the whole organization. And I think it's important to send a message to our staff that we value them as much as we value ourselves.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
Councillor Brandel.
I am not in favor of the increase to council. Appreciate all the committee's time and recommendations and the work that they put into it. And I do appreciate that our time is worth money, worth something. And we do put a lot of hours into this job. However, this year, and whether we make this decision tonight or whether we make it in a few months when we do the rest of it, I will not be in favor for it in a year that we just increased taxes to 5.9%. I need to sleep at night and I don't feel comfortable doing that this year.
Fair enough.
Uh,
Councillor Hughes.
I was going to say that I'm in favor of just tabling this discussion as well until we can dive into the report that's coming in May or June.
Okay,
Sleep on it.
Councillor Hughes. Or Councillor Drew. We should just start using first names. It's so much easier for me.
She's in two places at once. This
Yeah.
is good. Like,
Uh-huh.
you're really good at this. I'm okay with tabling it as well. I do believe, like, and I've talked about this during budget, that I think that we should be moving our organization as a whole to market rates, because that's going to affect staff retention and the type of talent that we're able to hire for all positions. So I'd like to look at it as a whole. I think it makes more sense. And I think that includes counselors and mayor as well, just because I feel like we need to be competitive for everything.
Okay. Other pieces, Councillor Adams.
I don't know if I'm necessarily in favor of us putting this off until the next one. It's not like we're going to be taking the recommended increases or whatever we're doing for cost of living or anything like that, that we're going to be assessing to the other communities. I mean, for us to look at and say we're going to have an increase of this for the staff, there's no way in hell we're doing that same increase for ourselves. It's going to be considerably lower. So to have it at the same time, I don't understand what the point of it is, other than to,
I think.
for lack of a better term, bury it with a larger discussion.
I think it's a timing piece, though. Instead of burying it, I think it's more like saying, okay, instead of voting on potentially giving ourselves the increase in compensation per the recommendation of the committee, and then looking at staff compensation after, that it's looking at it at the same time. So we're all on the same page. I don't think, that was more my perspective of it.
Yeah, so if this comes back, Counselor Adams, I almost did use your first name. If this comes back and say we're not, say we're Town of Slave Lake staff is, we're overpaying them. I don't think that's the case. But let's say that's it, like, oh, you guys aren't getting a raise, but guess what? We just gave ourselves one. I don't think that's a nice thing to do to them either. I actually like Tyler's idea to coincide them and then make a decision rather than say we voted to give ourselves a raise and we gave no one else a raise. That's pretty petty.
Well, I got a dumb question on this. Does anyone know what we actually get paid? I am terrible.
I'll look this up. I did look this up while we were in the meeting earlier. So the current rates per year for the mayor's salary is 23,000. And then for the counselor salary was 12,650. So the increase proposed by the council compensation committee would be an increase of $3,400 per year for the mayor to 26,400, and then an increase of 1,630 per counselor to 14,280 per year. It's handy to have an accountant on board here.
Not gonna retire in this job. Other questions, comments? Yeah, nobody else is jumping in here. I get Counselor Adams' point. However, I will say that at the end of the day, I don't think we're overpaying our staff too much. And the public doesn't even think that we're getting overpaid too much, which is why this is in front of us. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what we can afford and what makes sense. Because there's a big difference between what people are worth and what the organization can afford to pay them. I literally have a business that's my whole thing I have to deal with every single day. My people totally are worth more, but the system only supports X. And so we are part of that system. And so to look at that system in isolation, it's not about burying it. It's about understanding what we do for one should be similar to what we do for all, and it should make sense and we will afford whatever. So personally, that's why I didn't really want to make a decision until I can see the whole picture. And what that does to our budget, what it does to our impact, and away we go. I'm definitely not interested in the retroactive part of it either at all for us. I appreciate the committee's recommendation there, but I'm just saying that if we're looking at the whole system as a whole, is it fair? Is it competitive? Is it attracting people? You know, part of the reason, the biggest reason that we make sure that our rates are competitive for our staff is so that we attract good people. It shouldn't be any different for council. The community deserves to attract good people. That being said, I can't imagine that you know, $14,000 to $24,000 a year hasn't come out in droves. But we have to stay competitive. So I want to see what the impact is going to be to the whole big picture, because I think we're going to have some big, deeper discussions to worry about, and the significant impact that's going to come to adjust and be competitive with staff wages is going to be peanuts in the whole scheme of everything, to be honest, is my prediction. So I would be interested in tabling it. Make a motion. So I make a motion then that we table the council compensation committee discussion or decision, change it to decision, until we have made a decision on our, until after the reporting. Yeah. Probably, I'm struggling bad, so let's go.
That council table, the council compensation recommendation until the administration compensation
That sounds way better than what I was trying to do. Motion is on the floor. Any further discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. Okay. So with that, we'll jump into our correspondence. So the first is one from the Slave Lake Chamber of Commerce on page 22 in our package, encouraging the town of Slave Lake to participate in the Rural Renewal Stream Program. As I did step out for that, I don't have no idea what you guys decided on because we haven't seen the minutes yet. So I'll leave that up to you guys to say that group says that you should be doing it. What did you guys decide?
Yeah, I believe we tasked Gary to inquire more on.
On the process that it was gonna
Participate in the program.
participate. And if we
Yeah.
could involve, because it did say that in the brief overview, because I don't have the details on it in front of me, it did say that could involve other community partners, which would include the MD as well. So I believe the discussion that the council that remained in the room said we thought it was a good idea and we tasked
Did you guys make a
administration.
motion?
We
It's not
did.
in-
Yes, we did.
It's not on the task list.
We did make a motion.
Okay. So if we could notify the Chamber of Commerce that we're looking at it, that would probably be beneficial.
Would you like me to tell them on our Tuesday meeting?
That would be beneficial.
Okay,
Okay.
done.
Next, we did have a letter. There's a request from the National Police Federation. This is basically the association that represents the human resource impact, salary implications, benefits to RCMP and their membership. And so they have been doing a bunch of advocacy, pushing the province to not look at a provincial police system. And they are looking for our support in sending a letter or adding our name to a letter that they are sending. Essentially what they're wanting to do is the province has earmarked X amount of money for a transition piece to a new provincial police funding model. And so the idea is if you're not going to that, what are you doing with all this money? Why don't you put it back into resources that are needed? I'm wondering if we could support that. So thoughts on that? Councillor Brandel.
We did write a letter last year, I believe it was last year or 2020, stating that we were not in favor of this, of the new police service. So in that same realm, I think we should probably jump on board on this too, because they talk about the adding more Crown prosecutors and things, and that goes exactly the same thing that we have the AUMA vote on, so.
Okay, other questions, Councillor Adams?
Being new on council and comparing it, I don't have something to compare it to in the past or the presentations you've seen. But have we verified this 1.2 billion additional cost that's going to be for Alberta? What's Alberta and their police force, how's that impacting our communities as far as cost to us other than ongoing costs? I mean, we're facing ourselves being a small community of a $380,000 in back pay and a $280,000 increase per year on salary.
I can answer that question for you. We went to a transition study here that the province put on the old Sarge Hotel, and the province has stated that they won't be passing any of the costs down on to municipalities right now. They also spoke about how the federal government is trying to get out of any cost splitting. So it is the federal government's goal long-term to pass 100% of the costs on and not subsidize any portion.
But you're saying subsidized portion of the RCMP or?
Of the RCMP right now. So, and over time, with each contract negotiation, the number's getting less and less that they subsidize. So one way or another in the future, municipalities are going to be bearing the full cost of it.
So I feel that kind of supports my question is why are we supporting the RCMP necessarily? Is it, I don't have anything to base that decision on in order to support a letter like this.
Okay, so I would
That's what
say,
I'm getting at.
I would say that, so it went to two presentations. Council was invited to both. One was from National Police Federation to talk about their numbers. Province also came around and talked about their numbers and how those transition work. There was some discrepancy between the two pitches because there's, I guess, two different philosophies on what's there. In fairness to any outside piece looking from the government looking in, the government is still trying to figure out what their line items mean. So anybody on the outside has to interpret what they mean. And I think that's part of where the discrepancy goes. There is a push behind the scenes from the federal government that they want to get out of policing and make it more of a provincial issue. And so whether or not they keep providing it, but the province is paying it, or the provinces move to their own, I think that eventually we're going to get to some degree there anyway. As a taxpayer, the longer we fight that and delay that, the better off it is for our slave-like local taxpayers, I can tell you that. So I would continue to fight on that piece tooth and nail. I would say that the cost of RCMP is going up, and it is substantially different than when I started. Gary attended an event yesterday that you can just see that RCMP and policing costs will continue to go up because they're having to undergo a massive investment into infrastructure. And something as simple as handguns at $3,500 a handgun that they have to do in the training and stuff that goes with it, times our 15 officers or whatever else, that stuff starts to add up. We had a $26,000 laboratory bill in the past when it's been $1,200 last year. And so we're seeing these increases. That being said, there's nothing that province has shown me yet that would indicate that we are going to get an increased level of service or it's going to be cheaper. We're going to spend a massive amount of money to transition to something different, in which they said, yes, hey, we're gonna absorb all that. There'll be no cost to municipalities, which sounds really great, but eventually the piper has to pay. The other thing is while they're spending their money on one thing, that means they're not spending it on another. And we witnessed that with things like with our MSI. As a prime example, we're taking a 50% hit in some of that. And our roads would indicate that we can't sustain that on a long-term focus either. So my thing is that the idea is that we want, we've been petitioning for, and that wasn't this council that decided that, it was a council previous to this that championed a piece to say, as municipalities across Alberta, if we're going to spend time and money and resources on something, let's look at the justice system as a whole. Let's get access to justice. I like the idea of Crown prosecutors. I like the idea of crisis teams helping our people on it. At the end of the day, we're either on board where we think it's a really good idea to have a provincial police force in transition, or we don't. I haven't seen anything that says to me that it's a good idea or a waste or a good use of tax money. And so that's why I continue to say, hey, unless you can show me something different here, I think we're barking up the wrong tree and we could allocate this money and resources somewhere else. But each individual councillor needs to make that own decision for themselves. But I would totally be in support of this, largely because it echoes the same message we've been saying all along. Councillor Graham.
Steve had some questions and thoughts in his head there. And I think I will, to counter what Tyler or Councillor Warman and Councillor Adams had just said, so here's a really small win in a difference between the provincial police force and the RCMP. So a small municipality like Slave Lake, we're always getting new recruits, right? And we get them trained up 2 or 3 years and they're gone to the city or to bigger and better pastures. If you had the provincial police force, you could have the same officer here for 10 or 15 years, right? Or maybe that's too long, but for an extended period of time, we're used as a stepping stone here to get to the next level. And that in itself is a win. If you keep someone here longer than 3 years before they go to the city of Edmonton or Red Deer or a better RCMP posting, that's, I've been looking into this a lot since Councillor Ferguson brought it up. What was it, over a year ago?
Yeah.
And that would be the biggest win for me, that we could keep police here longer and you could figure out who the bad guys were and they were doing their job properly. And there's the counterpart that would say, well, they get to know the residents and now they're favoring them. Well, you get off on a speeding ticket because you knew a guy. Like you're going to get the criminals. I I'm for the provincial police force now or some version of it.
And that was one thing that was noted in the transitional study presentation that they had, is that there would be more of a local feel for officers. I feel that we kind of get shortchanged a little bit with our allotment of officers out of depot. We're paying full cost for these officers, but yet not being able to utilize them as a full officer. So that is a sore point for me.
And the counterpoint to that is that, we will always have fresh officers coming out of depot in our community, and how then, you know, they wouldn't become biased towards residents. I think it's actually really beneficial when you have long-term standing people, because they also build a family in the community. And then they build a presence here. And with that, without that transition, they actually care more, in addition, I believe, about the community that they're in, because they know it's not just, I need to put in my 3 to 5 years and then I can move on. So they actually, there's more of an investment, and also they have to abide by an ethical code of conduct that should, you know, decrease favoritism at that point in time.
Okay, so I would encourage you all, while you're doing your research, to look at the Surrey. Surrey just recently, well, over the last couple of years, is trying to move to their own police force. And I tell you, they regret it. Because the transition and the amount of officers coming over that were interested was way below what they thought it was going to be. The costs will balloon exponentially. And I can tell you, like, if our number one issue with the RCMP is that, hey, we want them to stick around longer, then let's petition the RCMP to do that. Versus start all over and create something totally new. Councillor Ferguson.
Honestly, I approach it from a little bit of a different philosophy. Maybe a point that hasn't been considered yet is, you know, first off, I'll start by saying that I support the work the RCMP does. And I do think we get great service for them. I agree with some aspects of the letter, specifically the portion about more frontline resources, accesses to supports, and increases of the resources within the justice system. But I'm definitely not in support of calling for the provincial government to cease their efforts and investment into the creation of a national police force. I recognize that the National Police Force is a union, and they're simply doing their job of advocating and representing their members. So some background history on where this whole thing came from. The provincial government formed a fair deal panel a few years back to better understand measures Alberta could undertake that would give us more autonomy and fairness. The panel consulted tens of thousands of Albertans, and one of the recommendations from that report was for Alberta to create its own provincial police force. So there's a much bigger picture here than just supporting the RCMP. The bigger picture here is that Alberta is not treated as an equal partner in Confederation, and we need to start doing things differently. A poll in 2019 from Abacus data showed that 75% of Albertans felt they were treated unfairly. No doubt, I would say a majority of our residents feel the same way. So Alberta is not treated fairly in Confederation. Consider Bill C-48, which is the tanker ban bill, or Bill C-69, which is famously dubbed the No New Pipelines Bill. These pieces of legislation disproportionately target Alberta and our resources. Or consider the carbon tax that has been rammed down our throats, which is making the cost of everything more expensive. Or better yet, equalization, which has cost Alberta billions and billions of dollars. Yet so often we won't take control of things that are within our own purview. Withdraw from CPP and administer it provincially. People get up in arms. Consider lobbying to collect our own taxes. People say no way. Referendum on equalization. The pundits say it's useless. And lastly, replace the RCMP with a provincial police force and municipalities fight it tooth and nail. So I would pose the question, how can we expect fairness and things to change if we just keep accepting status quo? No doubts, the cost of an Alberta police force would be substantial. However, if we can extract meaningful change to Confederation that addresses the substantial inequality in the way we are treated, we will gain far more than we ever pay. We talk about level of service. Yes, we do receive a decent level of service, but a change does not mean it will be a lesser service. On the contrary, it could be better due to it being administered at a provincial level. Quebec, Ontario, Newfoundland, and nearly every other major city in Canada are covered by police forces other than the RCMP, while more than half of Canadians. Even in Alberta, more than half of Albertans are covered by forces that aren't the RCMP. So if it works for them, it can work for us. So in closing, I would ask my fellow councillors to consider whether they think Alberta is truly treated fairly in Confederation, because replacing the RCMP is not about the RCMP. It's one piece of a puzzle to exert our autonomy from Ottawa and finally demand fairness for all Albertans, including our residents. And that's my $3 this time.
I like it.
That was like $8, man. So I will just, okay, you don't even want to, you don't even talk to that.
Good job, Bryce.
Yeah, and in fairness, I understand as counselors, we all have our independent views on that sort of stuff. My own take on that, yeah, I think Alberta gets short change from the federal government. I think there are people that believe that we should just have our own world and we'll just give Ottawa the finger. And there's a lot of those people that are strongly opposed to anything that's not Alberta first. I truly believe that Alberta is the economic engine that drives the rest of the country. But like any economic engine, it needs all the other parts to make it work. And so I can tell you, I don't see any scenario where giving our neighbors the finger gets us all back together and things working better. The Fair Deal panel was largely a political piece that was driven not from an operational piece that my feeling, not from an operational piece that, hey, let's make Alberta better. It's a way to say to Albertans, hey, we're working on something that's going to drive that wedge further and put us up higher on the pedestal. The police piece didn't even make the top of the list as the number one recommendation, or even the number two recommendation, or even the number three recommendation. And so personally, I think it's a waste of time and money. I think we should be focused on things that make a change. I am definitely not saying at any point that we are accepting status quo, that we are rolling over and do nothing. On the contrary, I think we're one of the communities that are trying to champion change by uniting the other municipalities across Alberta, screaming for change, I think would actually make a difference. So I know in our own world, we have limited capacity, we have limited resources, we have limited financial pieces to spend money on. And so when I'm looking at, can we do some things with healthcare or change a police force? I would go on healthcare. Can we put more money back in municipalities to make them sustainable or focus on a new police force? I'd put them back in municipalities. Can we fix our highway that they say they don't have enough money to do or go to a new police force? I'd fix our highways. Can we look at some education where, people in Alberta actually think that the educational changes would actually make sense instead of ripping it apart for 5 years and saying we have something that's garbage and we need to start over? Hey, I'd focus on education before I focus on police force. Do I think that we need to spend time sending a message to Ottawa that we are fed up? Absolutely, 100%, without a doubt. Do we need to make meaningful change there? Absolutely. Do we need to work together? Totally. But I just feel like this whole police thing is more politics and less procedural. So that being said, at the end of the day, I'm less concerned about supporting the National Police Federation and more about sending the right message to our province that focus your time and energy where it makes the most sense and has the best bang for its buck. And so I am still not in favor of exploring a possibility of another police force. That being said, this really comes down to a motion. And so to get things moving along, I will throw a motion out on the floor that we send a letter of support to the National Police Federation, letting them know that we support their efforts and that the town of Slave Lake is in favor of not exploring a provincial police force. So more discussion on that motion. Call the question, those in favor. Those opposed. That is carried. Sorry, that's defeated. That is defeated. So I guess the question is then, should we be amending our letter to the province? Because right now we are sending, we have sent a letter to the province previously and saying that we are not in favor of them chasing a provincial police force. Is there somebody that's wanting to make a motion that we send one saying that we are in favor of it? Councillor Adams.
No, my thing is not to make a motion here, but to say, I just don't know if I'm prepared to support a union in stating what needs to happen. I'm also not saying that I'm opposed to a provincial police force. I'm just not in a position to say that I want to support one or the other and from the town of Slave Lake.
Fair enough.
That echoes my thoughts exactly at this point in time also.
Okay. Okay, should be some good stuff for the paper next week. There's a lively discussion meeting. What's that? Yeah, he's still
You want
around.
some time to catch up, Joe?
Yeah, we can take a break. With that, Mayor's Corner, you know what? I've got nothing to add.
No, Mayor's
Oh,
Corner?
nah, I'm not gonna. I'm too fired up right now, so I'm just gonna, I need to let it simmer in my heart and my soul, so I'm just gonna bow out.
Wow. Has that ever happened before?
Oh, no.
No. No, I'm still,
We should just,
I'm still processing in my head here. Huh? What do we do now? Yeah. So with that, we got a closed session coming up. So a motion to go into closed session. Thank you, Councillor Gramlich. Any discussion? Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried.